Son-in-law sent me a text message on a Tuesday afternoon. Not a phone call. A text. 12 words. We're doing Thanksgiving as a nuclear family this year. Please respect that. I read it 3 times, sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a Lowe's. I had just bought weather stripping for their back door because my daughter had mentioned it was letting cold air in. The bag was on the passenger seat. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put the truck in reverse and drove home. I did not call my daughter. I did not reply to the text. I did not show up at their door with a casserole and wet eyes asking what I had done wrong. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 of those years working maintenance shifts at a bottling plant so my daughter could have piano lessons and school clothes that didn't come from Goodwill. I was not going to beg for a seat at a table I was helping to pay for. I should back up. My daughter Lydia is 36. She married a man named Brent 4 years ago. From the beginning, I tried to like him. I really did. He had a firm handshake and talked a lot about his 5-year plan. He sold software to mid-sized companies and was always on the phone, always closing something. The first Christmas after they got married, he spent most of dinner explaining to me why I should refinance my house. I smiled and passed the rolls. What I didn't say at that dinner, or any dinner after, was that I had been helping Lydia financially since long before Brent came into the picture. After her mother passed, 8 years ago now, Lydia struggled. She was working as a dental hygienist, making decent money, but the rent in her area had gotten brutal. I was living alone in the house I'd paid off, drawing a pension and a little social security. I had more than I needed. She was my daughter. It wasn't charity. It was just what you do. When she and Brent got together and eventually moved into a house, I kept helping. Not dramatically. Not in a way that made anyone uncomfortable. I covered her car payment, a Honda she'd had since before him. I paid for her health insurance gap when she switched jobs. And for the past 2 years, I have been sending Twiff $200 a month directly to their landlord. Their rent was $2,400. I covered half. Brent knew about some of it. Not all of it. Lydia and I had an understanding. I never asked for anything in return. I never brought it up at dinner. I never dangled it. But I was there every holiday. Every Thanksgiving since her mother died, it had been the two of us and whoever else she invited. We'd make her mother's cornbread dressing. We'd watch football and I'd fall asleep in the recliner and she'd put a blanket on me. That was our thing. That was what we had left of us. Brent's family is from Connecticut. His mother is a perfectly pleasant woman who sends gift baskets at Christmas and calls Lydia sweetie in a way that always sounds slightly like a warning. Brent has 2 sisters and a brother, and they all live within an hour of each other, up north. They do holidays together, big, coordinated, catered affairs by the sound of it. Brent had made clear early on that he found our modest Thanksgivings a little small. A little sad was the word I thought I heard under the word he actually used, which was low-key. Last year they went to Connecticut for Thanksgiving. That hurt, but I understood. Lydia called me from the car on the way up and we talked for an hour. She said she missed being home. I believed her. This year, I had assumed we were back to normal. Lydia had mentioned in September that they weren't going to Connecticut. I'd started planning. I was going to make a turkey breast. Just the two of us didn't need a whole bird. And I'd found a recipe for a cranberry sauce her mother used to make that I'd somehow never gotten around to trying. Then came the Tuesday text from Brent. Nuclear family. That was the phrase he used. Like I was some extended cousin twice removed. Like 8 years of showing up, of writing checks, of sitting in hospital waiting rooms and driving through ice storms and watching her graduate and helping her move 6 times. Like all of that placed me outside the nucleus. I sat with it for a few days. I want to be honest, there was a part of me that wanted to call Lydia immediately to ask her if she knew, if she agreed, if this was actually coming from her. But I didn't. Because somewhere in my gut I already knew the answer, and I wasn't ready to hear her say it. Or worse, to hear her defend him. On the Friday before Thanksgiving, I went to my bank. I didn't make a scene. I didn't withdraw everything dramatically in cash or close accounts. I just went online that evening and canceled the automatic transfer. The $2,000 that had been going to their landlord every first of the month for 2 years, cancelled. Effective immediately, meaning the December payment would not go through. I also called my insurance broker and removed Lydia from the supplemental dental plan I'd been carrying her on since her job switch. That would lapse at the end of the month. I called the Honda dealership's financing arm and explained that I would no longer be the secondary payer on the account. That took a little longer, but they were helpful. They'd send Lydia a letter explaining the change. The weather stripping I'd bought at Lowe's sat by my back door for 2 weeks. I thought about returning it. Then I thought, no, I'll keep it. I'll put it on my own door. It turned cold in November, and the draft had gotten bad on my side too. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it at my neighbor Al's place. Al is a widower like me, been retired from the fire department for a few years. His daughter and her husband came with the grandkids. I brought a pecan pie from the bakery on M. The kids were loud and the game was good, and I ate too much and I slept fine that night. Better than I expected. The 1st of December, the automatic transfer did not go out. On the 3rd, Lydia called. I let it go to voicemail. She said she was just checking in, that they'd had a good Thanksgiving, that she hoped I had too. She didn't mention the money. On the 8th, she called again. This time she sounded different. Less casual. She said the landlord had reached out that there might be some confusion about the rent, that she wanted to sort it out. Could I call her back? I called her back that evening. She started carefully the way people do when they've been coached or when they've been rehearsing in the shower. She asked if everything was okay with my account. She said the landlord was saying the payment hadn't come through. Was it an error? I told her it was not an error. There was a long silence. Dad, she said, what do you mean? I told her I meant exactly what I said, that I had cancelled the transfer, that it was a decision I had made and I was not going to argue about it over the phone. Another silence. Then her voice changed, got tighter. She said, is this about Thanksgiving? I said, I'm going to let you think about that and we'll talk when you're ready. She was not ready that evening. She called back twice. I let both go to voicemail. The messages were not angry exactly, but confused in that way that is really anger wearing a calmer outfit. Brent called once. I did not listen to that voicemail for 3 days. When I finally did, he was controlled and businesslike, the way he always is, and he explained that my decision was creating a serious financial hardship and that he hoped I would reconsider. He said they had budgeted assuming the support would continue. He said, and this is the part I've thought about many times since. He said, I know you and Lydia have your arrangement, but this affects our whole household. I listened to that twice. Our whole household. Yes, it did. That was rather the point. What Brent apparently did not know, and what became clear over the following week, was how much of their whole household I had quietly been holding up. Lydia knew, but I don't think she had ever laid it out for him in a single conversation. The rent was the most visible, but when the dental insurance lapse letter arrived, Lydia called me crying. She had a crown that needed to be replaced and she'd been waiting on the coverage. That was the first time she sounded genuinely scared, not just upset. And when the Honda financing company sent the letter about the secondary payer change, and Lydia called the number on the letter and they explained what it meant for her payment structure. That was the phone call where she stopped being careful and said plainly that she didn't understand how I could do this. I told her that I didn't understand how she could let her husband send me 12 words on a Tuesday and expect that nothing would change. She said she hadn't known he was going to send it. I said, did you know I wasn't invited? The silence that followed was the longest of all the silences. It's just one Thanksgiving, Dad, she finally said. Lydia, I said, it's never just one Thanksgiving. I don't think she had a response for that because she started crying again, differently this time, not frustrated crying. Sad crying, like she was finally hearing something she'd been avoiding. I let her cry without filling the space with words. I'd learned to do that with Mother, years ago. Some things need room. When she calmed down, I told her the truth. Not harshly, not triumphantly, just plainly. I told her I loved her more than anything remaining in my life. I told her that I had been glad to help because helping her was not a transaction to me. It was just what love looked like at my age, with my resources, for my only child. But I told her that I needed to matter, not in a dependent way, not in a way that required constant acknowledgement. Just, I needed to be inside the circle, not outside it. I was not a bill to be paid and a guest to be scheduled. She asked me if I would reconsider. I told her that depended on what she meant by reconsider. She asked if we could talk in person. I said yes. Not at their house, somewhere neutral. She suggested the diner near my neighborhood where we used to go when she was in high school, the one with the counter stools that spin if you push them right. I hadn't been back there in years. I said that sounded fine. We met on a Saturday. Brent was not there. I noticed that. Lydia looked tired. She'd lost a little weight, I thought. Or maybe it was the December light. She had her mother's eyes, the kind that show everything. We ordered coffee. She wrapped both hands around the mug the way her mother always did. She told me she was sorry. Not a defended sorry. Not a sorry if you felt sorry. She said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have said something to him when he told me. I didn't because I thought it would cause a fight. And I chose avoiding the fight over calling you. And that wasn't right." I drank my coffee. I looked at my daughter. I thought about the cornbread dressing we didn't make and the cranberry sauce recipe sitting on my kitchen counter. I said, "I appreciate that." We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't all clean and resolved. There are things in a family that don't get resolved in a diner over one conversation. But she was present. She was honest. She said she and Brent had had significant conversations in the past few weeks, not all of them comfortable, and that she had said things she'd been needing to say for a while. She did not ask me to reinstate the rent payment. That surprised me. When I brought it up toward the end, said I wasn't opposed to continuing some support if things changed. She shook her head. She said she didn't want to have that be the reason I was included in their lives. She said she needed to handle that on their own terms now. I told her I was proud of her for saying that. She laughed a little. It sounded like relief. On the drive home, I passed the neighborhood where she and Brent live. I didn't stop. But I looked at the house as I went by. A corner house on a street lined with bare elms. A wreath still on the door. The lights were on inside. I kept driving. When I got home, I put the weather stripping on my own back door. It had taken me this long to get around to it. The draft disappeared immediately. The house was warmer than it had been in months. I sat down in my chair by the window and called Al. I told him it had been a decent day. He said good. He asked if I wanted to come over Sunday for football. I said yes. I don't know how things will settle between Lydia and me, or between me and the man she married, or what holidays will look like going forward. Some of that is out of my hands. But I know this. I am 63 years old, and I've earned the right to be inside the circle. Not as a resource, not as a checkbook with a heartbeat, as a father, as a person who shows up and keeps showing up and deserves, at minimum, to be asked. The weather stripping cost me $14.97 at Lowe's. Best money I spent all year. The weather stripping cost me $14.97. I keep thinking about that. Not because of the money, $14.97, but because I had bought it for their door. I had driven to Lowe's, walked the aisles, picked the right kind, paid for it, and driven it to their neighborhood, all before the text came through. All before I knew I wasn't welcome at the table I had quietly been setting for years. And when I finally put that strip on my own door instead, and the draft stopped, and the house got warm, I understood something I hadn't been able to say out loud until then. You cannot keep patching other people's drafts while your own house goes cold. I've thought a lot about what happened between me and my daughter, and if I'm honest, I have to take some of the responsibility for how things drifted this far. Not for Brent's text. That was his doing. But I had made it easy for years to be generous without ever being clear. I gave without conditions, which I still believe was right. But I also gave without ever saying, "This is what I need in return." Not money, not gratitude performances at the dinner table, just to be inside the circle. To matter. That's not too much to ask. And the fact that I never asked it, never said it plainly, was its own kind of failure. A quiet one. The kind that accumulates slowly until a Tuesday text message makes it impossible to ignore. What I did when I canceled those payments, the rent, the insurance, the car arrangements, wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that, at least to myself. It wasn't cruelty. It was the first honest thing I'd done in that situation in years, because every month I had sent the tab at $19 while being treated as a peripheral figure. I was being dishonest. I was saying with my actions, "This is acceptable." It wasn't. The moment I stopped pretending otherwise, things became real. And real things, even painful ones, can actually change. Lydia showed up at that diner, and she apologized the right way. No hedging. No sorry you felt that way. She looked at me across a spinning counter stool and told me she had chosen avoiding a fight over calling her father, and that it wasn't right. That took something. It took the kind of honesty that doesn't come easy when you've been managing two sets of expectations for 4 years. I was proud of her. I still am. What I hope she carries forward, what I hope for both of us, is that the people who love you quietly, steadily, without fanfare, are often the ones it costs the least to impute and the most to lose. Integrity in a family isn't about grand gestures. It's about whether you make the call, whether you say the name, whether, when someone asks you, was I invited, you can answer without a long silence. I'm 63. I don't need much. I need to know I'm someone's dad, not just someone's account. The house has been warm since December. I'd like to keep it that way.